Well boys, welcome back to the channel, and in tonight's video we're going to try to figure out what is wrong with Snowbunny. So 2 weeks ago I was driving it and cruising on the way to town to go to the gym, and she just shut off. She lost all power, and the motor turns over. It sounds like it doesn't have compression anymore, so it could be something big, could be something little, who knows. But as you just seen, I had to push her inside, and she's been down for a little bit now. So in tonight's video, we're gonna try to be a little more in depth on showing you every process and every part of trying to figure out what's wrong with it. But hope you guys are ready for the video, and stay tuned. What do you think is actually wrong with this thing? Leave down in the comments below. All right guys, so if this is your first time watching a Yoast built video, this is my 1998 EK. It's actually an EJ8, it's a Coupe EX model. It has a built G22 in it. Has a H22 head, F22 block, H22 Type S transmission, or a T2, T4, whatever you want to call it. And like I said, I was driving it and it just shut off. The cams and everything still looked to be in the right position. When I turned it over, it did not sound like it had any compression. So the first thing I'm going to do, so I'm going to take this jumper wire right here. I'm going to jump the starter solenoid, and we're going to see if, when we hit the starter solenoid right here, if the timing belt still spins, because I'm pretty sure it stripped the teeth off the bottom of the timing belt or something, because I was just cruising at like a normal speed. And ECU, there's no check engine light, there's no nothing, so I'm just assuming that it killed the timing belt somewhat. So let me hit it right here and we'll see. So as you see, the timing belt doesn't move at all. That is not what we wanted to see. So that means we're going to be pulling this thing apart, and it probably bent some valves. Hopefully it didn't tear up the head too bad. I think I do have an extra head laying around, so we got a lot of work to do. So let me put you guys on a time lapse, and I'll get to pulling this thing apart, and hopefully we didn't damage the pistons and rods or anything like that, because this motor has really nice parts inside of it. Yeah, this is not good. All right, since I said we're going to do step by step, I'm going to do 2 or 3 steps, stop, explain, do 2 or 3 steps, stop, explain, and show you everything I did. So valve cover, 10mm bolts, plate cover for the coil unplug, Robert Burton Racing coil unplug kit for an H22, 4 10mm that actually hold the plate over top of the coils, and then 3 12mm for the distributor. Got the coil and plate plug right here, distributor right there, bolts right there, valve covers over there. Next step, loosen your timing belt tensioner. There's a 10mm on the block and a 14mm on the side of the actual stud, and then you have these 10s and 12mm. You need to loosen these 4 10s, these 4 10s, and then all the 12s in the center. Once you do that, your timing belt will be loose, all this stuff will be loose, and once you pull all of that off, make sure you set it in the valve cover. Don't mix and match any of the stuff. They all have to go back where they came from. And if all of the valves come up and none of them are stuck down, then we might be good. We might not have dropped a valve or bit any valves. If not, then we pull the cylinder head, which involves header, intake manifold, the whole top of the motor comes apart. As long as the pistons and rods aren't damaged, I'll find another one of my cylinder heads, stick it on it, might throw the cams back in it, might not, depending on what cylinder head I find. And let me get the timing belt off, pull the cams, and then I'll get back to you on the video and see what we found. All right, boys, so we have the cams out. Everything's over there. All of the cam retaining caps, all the bolts, everything. And the camera will focus. We'll try to zoom in here. I don't see any drop valves. Everything looks pretty good. I went over here to the timing belt. Let me get the light so you can actually see. Put the light right there on the crank gear, and you see how there's a little gap right there? The keyway and the crank bolt and the crank broke. So maybe we got lucky and we didn't bend any valves. It really won't focus. Let's see if we can get it to focus. There you go. Look at that. Spins free as day. So what I'm gonna do now that we know that is I'm gonna get this thing up on the lift. I'm going to pull the driver's side tire off, pull the crank pulley bolt off, pull the accessory belt off, which only feeds the alternator on this car, pull the balance shaft belt off, which this car doesn't have, but it has the pulley there, and then we're going to pull the crank pulley off and see how bad the damage really is, because maybe we saved the motor, maybe we didn't. We might have to put it back together and do a compression test to make sure we didn't hurt anything. But if it actually just stopped and didn't hit any valves, we could be good. All right, so we got her up on the lift. We got the tire off, and you tell me what's wrong. There's the key right there. Yeah. So crank pulley bolt, no Loctite left on it. Nothing looks damaged, but yeah, that's never good. Well, pulled it all apart. That doesn't look damaged at all. This one right here doesn't look damaged at all. The crank, let me shine the light up here. Doesn't look to be damaged at all. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this at top dead center and put some Loctite on the bolt, put it back together, stick the cams back in it, turn it over, and hopefully, because right now there's no cams in it, the piston shouldn't hit any valves. Hopefully we can put it at top dead center, put it back together, put the timing belt on it. I'll pull the plugs and do a compression test, and we might have fixed it. As simple as that. I've had the crank pulley bolt come off on G22s a couple of times. That's the one reason I looked for this. That's also a problem when you start revving a high stroke motor past 8,500 RPMs. As you guys know, this thing revs with the cams and head package that's on this thing. It revs freely to like 9,200 RPMs. So I'm probably going to go into tune, and if there's no problem with the motor, I'm going to go into tune. I'm going to turn the rev limiter down to like maybe 8,000 RPMs. There's no need for me to sing the motor that high, and I'll throw a lot of Loctite on this bolt if we don't have any compression problems, and put her back together. If not, there's going to be more video after this of it not running or having bad compression or pulling the cylinder head. So let me throw it back together on the bottom end and throw the cams in it, pull the plugs, and I'll show you once we have this fixed and we're putting the head back together. All right, so we pulled the plugs. They look like E85 plugs with no sign of damage. So that is a good indicator that we shouldn't have had any metal fly through the motor, which means the valves should be good. Hopefully they are good, because if you guys don't know, this thing has a set of Fiera, however you say that. I always get confused on how to say it. It has a set of fancy flat face valves, and it also has full Brian Crower springs and retainers. So hopefully the crank just stopped with the compression and none of the pistons hit the valves. But we got those out. We're going to get to putting the head back together. We're going to time it. And I actually have upgraded cam gears I could put on this. I ordered them a long time ago from, I think they're off of Shane's Turbo Build. I'm pretty sure that's where I got them from. But we're going to put a set of blue cam gears on this thing and dress her up a little bit. So let me go get those out of the house and get to putting these back together. What do you guys think about the cam gears? So those are the OEM cam gears. You saw I have paint on the upper thing. And these are the aftermarket ones. So we're gonna have a little blue to go with the blue timing belt. This car really doesn't have a color scheme, but I like silvers, blues, and blacks. It just always works well together. So you got like graphite gray wheels, silver car, blue and black accessories, your timing belt, your couplers, cam gears. So if you look at it, it looks like a clean color scheme. And this car being an EX has like the confetti gray seats that have like a little blue, like a blue hint to it. So let's swap these out. It's as simple as pulling the cam bolts off and just swapping them on, and then get this thing back together. Well, boys, sadly we can't use these because these require an aftermarket key, like Woodruff key for the cams, and I actually don't have any sets of those. But for the timing on a H22, a G22, an F20B, or anything like that, they make this tool. This thing is like the best thing ever. If you have factory cams, you can actually line them up with these holes right here. Because we're using aftermarket Pro ones, you cannot. But you slide this tool right here in the cam gears, and it actually lines up, and there's a line across there. And if you go down here to the crank pulley, I don't know how well you're gonna be able to see that, but there's an arrow like right at the top, and there's an arrow on the oil pump. You basically line that up, hold that in place. This will hold the cam gears in place, and then you just slide your belt back on and then tighten everything down, and you will be in timing. So it's not that hard. People make this way overcomplicated when they try to time these motors. It's not that hard. If you're going to degree the motor, of course, then you have to change everything, use the aftermarket cam gears, and then it makes everything a little bit harder. But if you're just trying to time it how it factory is timed, it's not that complicated. All right, boys, she's timed. Timing belt's on and tight. Crank pulley bolt has Loctite on it. Took the Milwaukee to it this time, not no regular baby gun. And as you see, we got the compression tester in cylinder 1. Got my little jumper wire right there. I'm not even gonna cycle the key on the car. I don't want to put fuel in the cylinders. I'm just gonna turn it over using the starter, do a compression test on all 4 cylinders. Everything looks good, has good oil pressure because oil is all over the cams already. And we are going to see if the motor's still good or if it's not. And I'll get back to you after I do all 4 cylinders, and I will let you know. Well, boys, every cylinder has 0 compression. So it looks like we're going to be pulling the head off of this. And I already pulled the header off. Let me see if it'll focus. And I can see light. I can see right into the piston with a flashlight. So that means the pistons came up and hit every exhaust valve. So the cylinder head is going to have to go to the machine shop and get fixed. But I should have 2 or 3 cylinder heads laying around that I can throw on this and at least get it running. But yeah, RIP flat face valves. That means there's going to be indents in every piston. So what I'm going to do is take all that stuff I just put back together, back apart, pull the intake manifold, finish pulling the header, get the water out of the motor, get the oil out of the motor, pull the fuel system apart, and pull the head off. This thing does have ARP head studs and everything, so it should come apart pretty easily. And yeah, not what I wanted to see. 0 compression on all 4 cylinders. Snowbunny, RIP little buddy. You were fun while you lasted. Damn it. Well, can't really complain too much. They gave me fun while it lasted, so I'm gonna pull it back apart. I'll get back to you guys once I have intake off, header off, cams back out, and I get to the point of pulling the cylinder head. All right, boys, update. Intake manifold's off, fuel rail's off, VTEC solenoid distributor, radiator is out, crank pulley's back off, head bolts, the nuts for the head bolts are off. All of the wiring harness is disconnected, all the coolant stuff is disconnected. The oil is draining out of the motor, and the cylinder head should be loose. So I'm gonna set you guys right here if the camera will stay. Looks like the camera will stay. And I need a couple towels because this cylinder head is only a mess when I set it down on the floor. There's 2 towels. So if you ever have studs on your car and you gotta pull the cylinder head, it's usually a pain because it gets stuck. Give me the cylinder head. Gasket gets stuck on the studs. Move my fingers. Get some towels so I can get a better grip on it. And give me the cylinder head. What are we stuck on? Towels back under here. There we go. Put the cylinder head on the ground. Oh yeah. The valves definitely hit the pistons. You can see right there, right there, right there, and right there. Whew, that hurt my back. Alright guys, so after looking at the cylinder head, springs and retainers look good. None of the top of the valves broke off or anything. Anytime you have aftermarket valves like this, they're actually known to bend instead of break, whereas an OEM valve will actually snap off, go through your motor and destroy everything. These aftermarket valves, one nice thing about them is even when they bend, all 8 of the exhaust valves are bent by the way, even when they bend, they usually, I will say usually because sometimes they still break off and go through the motor. If it rips the top of the valve off, it breaks off and goes through the motor regardless. But if you actually hit the pistons with the valves, you'll get this. So you can see the light through there. You can see the light. You can see the light. You can see the light. So if you put it on the intake side, perfectly sealed, perfectly sealed, perfectly sealed, and perfectly sealed. So what we did is, of course, the crank pulley backed out. It bent all 8 exhaust valves, which is why we have no compression. But good thing is I have my old school F20B cylinder head, which was the first head I ever did a G series swap with. So the first time I went dual overhead cam VTEC on any of my cars, I've had this cylinder head for 9 years now. This was the original cylinder head I used to go dual overhead cam VTEC. So one thing you have to do when you're putting an H head on an F block is you have to block off these holes right here. You'll see right here and right here, the holes are blocked off. This gets welded up. You can actually see the difference in the color of the metal if the, let's see if the camera will focus on it. Yeah, you can kind of see it. There you go. So you can see the difference on the color of the metal. These are normally holes like this for oil returns. A dual cam H22 has 8 oil returns, and a single cam block only has 6 oil returns. So that is the one thing you block off. And as you see, I already threw the F20B cylinder head on here, cleaned up the head gasket, cleaned up the surfaces, wiped everything down with cleaner, slapped it on. Now I need to torque the head down and get everything back on the motor. I do not have oil, so I cannot start this thing tonight, but this will be the end of the video. Next time you see this car, it will be running. Hopefully there's no more issues. Once I throw it back together, throw all the timing stuff on it, throw the cams on it. I don't want to bore you with all of that, but as you see, we hurt Snowbunny. Snowbunny has 8 bent exhaust valves. So we're gonna get it back together with the F20B head, and it will potentially make more power because the cylinder head for an F20B has a smaller combustion chamber than the cylinder head for an H22. And the pistons are 12.5 to 1. So with this cylinder head and the head gasket we had, it was rated at like 12.3 to 1. With this cylinder head, because this cylinder head actually has been cut one more time than that cylinder head, we might actually be 12.7, maybe 13 to 1 compression. Whereas before, I was always thinking this motor was there. I actually went online and there's a compression calculator. It's called like Zell AutoWorks. And I put in the numbers for that cylinder head, the pistons and rods, or the pistons, the rods, and everything. You can do all the math on that page. And this thing was only like 12.3 to 1. So we made 227 horsepower with 12.3 to 1. So if it's actually 13 to 1, it will gain some power. So let me get throwing it all back together. And hopefully you enjoyed the video. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you want to see me do with this thing? I do need to spray it, but I just need to get it back together for first, because this is what I built to drive around this winter, and I've been putting tons of miles on my Juke, going to the gym every day. I started going to the gym a lot more now. I'm trying to get back into shape. I need to get into race car weight. I used to be about 230 pounds, 225 pounds. I've let myself kind of go. I got up to like 275 pounds. So got back into lifting like I used to do. And hopefully you enjoyed this video. At this point, oh wow, the camera's fogging up really bad. Hold on. At this point, the video is probably pretty long. So hopefully you enjoyed it. You got to see the ins and outs of a G22. You got to see what happened when I broke it. And camera's fogging. All right, guys. So little after the video end, extra credit. It's been 2 hours and 41 minutes now. The car is 100% back together. I drained all the fluid out of the trans. I drained all the fluid out of the motor. I drained all the water out of the motor. Sprayed everything all. So the motor is 100% dry right now. I'm going to let the motor set overnight. Let the gaskets and all settle in. I'm going to get oil for it in the morning for the motor and the transmission. I'll get some antifreeze for it because, like I said, this is my winter car, so it does need to run antifreeze. If I ever plan to go to the track, I'll just drain it out, put water in it, and then do the same thing, because you're not supposed to run antifreeze at the racetrack. But that'll be the end of the video, 100% this time. Everything's done. Everything's back together. It has spark plugs, everything in it, coil and plug. All the stuff is hooked back up. I rerouted some of the stuff so it looks a little cleaner. But Snowbunny will be back tomorrow. I just need to get some oil, start her up. I already cycled the key a couple of times. There's no check engine light and there's no fuel leaks. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. Let's hit 10,000 as soon as possible. And as always, you guys are the greatest.